Hello YouTube, Dave here again. In the descriptions for pretty much all the videos that I put out, there are links to two sites in particular. There's one for DM's Guild and one for DriveThru RPG. And those are really fantastic services, primarily for finding stuff that's out of print throughout RPG's entire history, basically. DM's Guild is specifically focused on Dungeons and Dragons, and that's sort of the main area where I myself focus on, but DriveThru RPG has all kinds of stuff for various systems. There's a large collection of PDFs that you can get, but they also offer print on demand for certain items. So today what I'm going to be showing are all the Dungeons and Dragons items, specifically Dungeons and Dragons, that I have purchased through DM's Guild. And it's been a while since I talked about DM's Guild, which I feel like it's a bit of a shame because it is a fantastic service. And if you're someone who just likes to get PDFs, you're not concerned about print on demand, then there is all kinds of stuff available there. They have the Zero Edition books, like all of them. They have a large assortment of First Edition, Second Edition, Third, 3.5, 4th, and 5th Edition stuff available, though the 5th Edition is largely things like Adventures League modules or user-generated content, but there is a huge back catalog of PDFs. There's a pretty impressive amount of print-on-demand items as well, which again is my main focus because PDFs are honestly hard for me to read through. Just because staring at a computer screen for too long just gives me like headaches or migraines. It's not a good scene, but I do, and I love physical items. I'm that kind of person. I would still rather buy a CD than just download songs. Like that's just the kind of person that I am. So while I've shown these in individual videos in the past, and some have appeared in other videos talking about perhaps the edition that these things were attached to, I honestly was kind of surprised to find out that I had never really done a video just showing all the print-on-demand stuff that I have. So I wanted to do that today, and there's at least one thing that I didn't show here in a video because I've had people surprised to know that I have it. So I'm not going to be doing like reviews of the individual items. I'm not going to be flipping through them in any great detail, but I will at least open up each product and sort of show what it looks like, the quality of it, and all that. So I'm actually going to start, and these aren't in a super particular order, but I am going to start with the first two things that I ever ordered from this service, and that would be the first one is the Player's Companion for the Elemental Evil storyline. So this is sort of the player's book that you could get to go alongside of the Princes of the Apocalypse story. So this gives you some new races as well as some new spell options that you can do. And the PDF for this is available for free. I think it's still available for free if I recall correctly. It's been a while since I checked on that, but the PDF didn't cost anything to get, but you could get the print-on-demand item, which is what I wanted to get here. In fact, this print-on-demand item was one of the only ways that you could get the Aarakocra race up until the release of Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, which is the newest D&D book out there for 5th edition at the time that I'm recording this. But overall, really fantastic quality, nice cover and everything. Very, very professional, high-quality job, so I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. And again, this is something that wasn't available at regular retail, so all the more reason for me to want to pick it up. And it was a 5th edition item that I felt was missing from my collection. I had seen other people do videos showing that they had it, so I just kind of felt that I had to get this for myself as well. The next item is the Scourge of the Sword Coast. This is part of the Sundering storyline or series of adventures, which were essentially used for the D&D 5th edition or the D&D Next playtest. There were other items that were actually available commercial retail in this product line prior to this coming out. You had the Murder in Baldur's Gate and Legacy of the Crystal Shard, which were really excellent packages with all kinds of great stuff in there, like DM screen, fantastic adventure, great information on the location that it's set in. And they were, but the one thing that those ones that were available, Baldur's Gate and Crystal Shard, was that they were designed to work with several different editions. So the stat blocks weren't actually included in the books themselves, but you could get them as a free download, and they would have 3rd edition or 3.5 D&D, 4th edition, and the D&D Next statistics for everything. This one here is solely designed for the D&D Next playtest. And in a way is in line with or compatible with 5th edition D&D, although it's not quite perfect in terms of just being able to pick this up and run it without having to do any sort of legwork or conversion, but this was still something that I really wanted to get. And again, this wasn't something that was available for commercial retail. You could, stores could get them in as one of the seasons for the playtest. So this was the May session of the D&D Encounters official play program. So stores would get these in, but I don't think they got it as like a collection like this. I want to say it was just as the individual sections that you would get for each week, but I could be wrong. I'm not saying that 100%, but this was something that I really wanted to get, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. Another great thing, so those were both things that weren't available regularly. So these were things that you couldn't just go out to a local bookstore or even your local game store and be able to purchase. So that's one way that you can use stuff like DM's Guild. Another thing that you can use it for is to acquire out-of-print materials that you want to get into your collection, but they're hard to find, or when you do find them online for things like eBay or other like Facebook Marketplace or other such services, they're usually ridiculously expensive or they're in rough shape. So I've actually used DM's Guild primarily to fill the void in my collection for certain editions of the D&D game or certain products within the D&D game that I've always wanted to have, but would have either never found in the wild, or if I did find them or did find like a listing for them online, it was just way more than I was willing to pay. So the first item in that line of thinking that I picked up was the D&D Rules Cyclopedia. This was a holy grail item, and for the longest time it was an item that I resigned myself to the fact that I was never going to own a copy of until it became available print on demand. You can get it as a soft cover as well, but I wanted to go with the hardcover. I also had a viewer actually send me an original copy of the Rules Cyclopedia that he was able to pick up for just a couple of dollars, that he had as an extra copy, which was really just amazing, and it's still one of my prized possessions to this day. But this video is about print on demand. And this book in particular has a pretty lengthy story beyond just how much difficulty I had. And when I first started buying these things, they were being printed over in Europe and being sent overseas, which had some issues in that system, including the fact that some products would just simply go missing. So when I first ordered this, I'm not going to go into great detail, but let's just say there was a whole kerfuffle with this book. So after 30 days, and actually it was more than 30 days, I actually waited probably about another week or two after that. I still never received the copy that I had ordered. There's no tracking numbers or anything available for it. So I contacted their customer service, and we'll talk a little bit more about their customer service sort of towards the end of this. Basically, they said, okay, they marked it as not received. They had printed off another one, and they had so they were sending it to me. So there was a mix-up in that. So I did get something, but it wasn't the Rules Cyclopedia. So I contacted them back and said, okay, there seems to be an issue here. So they did it for a third time, tried to have this printed off and sent to me. I did finally get a copy of the Rules Cyclopedia, which is the BECMI D&D, the Menser D&D, not the Moldvay, but the Menser version, which had the basic expert, companion, master, and immortal rules. This was the first four, so it was basic, expert, companion, and master rules, but it didn't really touch on the immortal stuff here. But I did finally eventually get a copy of this in. And then the first copy that I had ordered way back when showed up about 2 months after it was like 2.5 months after I had initially ordered it from the very first time. and I ended up selling that to a friend of mine that was interested in having a copy as well. So, but this was something that was a holy grail item, something that online prices were in the hundreds of dollars, and I'm not spending that kind of money. Like, I have a very hard limit of $100 for any one item in my RPG collection. So this was something that I pounced on immediately, and patience is a virtue because I did finally get it, but boy, it was rough getting there. So the first time that they had marked the item as lost and had it reprinted and sent off, what they actually ended up sending me was a copy of Unearthed Arcana for first edition AD&D. There was essentially a mix-up in the printer's database. So when people were ordering the Rule Cyclopedia, the product number or ID that the printer was getting was actually connected to this book. What was interesting about that is that the Unearthed Arcana book, at least at the time, I think it is available now, but at least at the time, wasn't actually supposed to be available print on demand. So for a while, people that got this book by accident were the only ones to get the print-on-demand version. I do have the original version of this as well, and at one point I was considering maybe giving this away or selling it or doing something with it, but then I realized that the binding in the original book was really bad. None of the pages were falling out in my copy, but the first time I went to open it after getting this, I actually looked at the binding itself and was like, no, that's something that if I use this book at all, it's going to fall apart. And that was an issue with some of the TSR books at the time. So I decided to actually keep this for two reasons. One was at the time, it was something that was a very rare item because the print-on-demand version wasn't available. Like, you weren't supposed to be able to get it. So that was sort of like a nice little aspect of it. But another one was that I was planning on running a first edition AD&D game, and I actually did run one for a while, and I wanted to use Unearthed Arcana, but I wasn't going to use the one that could fall apart if I took it with me. So this was the one that I had taken with me to my local game store when I was running first edition AD&D. So that's why I still have that one. Going back to the basic expert rules, the other things that I picked up along those lines, which is sort of the majority of what I ended up getting from DM's Guild. So again, things that I just never found in the wild ever. So the first thing that I picked up was Dungeon Module B1, In Search of the Unknown. This was actually the original module that came with the Eric Holmes basic rule set, which actually came out, I think it predated first edition AD&D. So it was later replaced with Keep on the Borderlands, Module B2, but this was one that I didn't have, and I wanted to have a copy of it in my collection because it is one of those super early modules. And this is one where it sort of gets you to fill in or populate the dungeon yourself using the encounters that they provide you instead of having it be sort of set. It was meant to teach you to do these things, although it's still kind of convoluted or complex for beginners, but it's something that it is a big part of D&D's history, so I wanted to have a copy of that. I also already had a copy of B2, so I wanted to have B1 as well. I also picked up the Shady Dragon Inn. This was accessory 1, AC1 for this, going back to the also part of the D&D basic expert rule set. This would have been probably put out alongside of the Moldvay basic, or like the magenta, the box set that had come out. But this is essentially just a ready-made inn for you to use with a whole bunch of ready-to-play NPCs for all the different classes. Fighters, magic users, clerics, thieves, dwarves, elves, halflings, and special characters, including one of my all-time favorite special characters, Warduke, the chaotic fighter, or the evil fighter. Actually, I think it was the evil fighter because the alignment system in basic rules was, I think, just lawful, neutral, or chaotic. So he was the evil fighter. But this was, again, a really, really cool accessory. A friend of mine had the original, and I just fell in love with it the second I looked through the original. So this was an absolute no-brainer. This was the first thing that I picked up, first or second thing that I picked up after getting the Rule Cyclopedia. Right, up next, I've also for D&D Basic is the Creature Catalog. This is essentially just an expanded list of monsters for the D&D Basic rule set. It's not what I would necessarily consider essential, but there are some cool things in here. Overall, it's just an interesting collection of monsters, but it's something that it's always good to have more creatures available to you. So while it may not have a ton of the iconic creatures that you may think of when you think of Dungeons & Dragons, it's still a really, really great book to have, and there were a couple things in here that were unique to it that I just, again, absolutely loved. It had like the Undead Dragon was in here, as well as a few other things, but really, really cool book. Again, collection of monsters. It's always nice to have monsters. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is something that you need to have, because a lot of the more iconic creatures are already in the Rule Cyclopedia. But if you want to run Basic Expert and you don't want to just be stuck with the selection in there, you want to throw something a little more unique at the players, then this is an excellent book to pick up for that. And then finally, for Basic D&D, I also got the compilation book B1 through B9. This is In Search of Adventure. So this has all of the adventures designed for the basic rule set, which is for levels 1 through 3, that had come out for the D&D Basic Expert system. Now, having 9 modules seems like a lot for characters of levels 1 through 3, and it is. This doesn't actually reprint the adventures in their entirety. It sort of takes the most iconic parts of them and introduces them as sort of a branching storylines. So you're not going to go through every single module from B1 through to B9, but you may start with one of the modules and work your way through some of the others. B1, for example, In Search of the Unknown, only exists as a map that you have here. It doesn't actually reprint any real aspects of the adventure at all, and it's one of those like optional side quest ones. But this was a really, really cool book. So just to show you, because I'm not going to go through absolutely everything, it does give you an idea of where each of the sections that you're reading through came from. But this is the adventure flowchart. So you start off with the threshold, and then the choices that you make can take you through to some of these different branching paths. So for example, you may end up, going through this sort of section here, or you may go through this much longer one. But you're not going to go through every single one of those modules. So there are differences, and different playthroughs can have completely different branching paths, and you could find your way working from one of those branching paths back into another one. But it is a really, really great book. I do want to do a full review on it at some point, so I do need to get back into reading through this, because this is something that is really, really cool. And if I do run Basic Expert or Rule Cyclopedia at any point, this is what I will probably end up using, is this book here. Alright, I don't have much for first edition other than that Unearthed Arcana, but I also do have a copy of D2, Dungeon Module D2, Shrine of the Kuo-toa. I didn't actually order this, so this sort of ties into the customer service stuff, which maybe I'll get into now, so I don't have to just keep saying I'll get back to this later. But essentially, DM's Guild has a really good customer service when it comes to things not arriving, or if they show up in a particularly damaged state. They at least in my experience, they were really easy to work with. So the first things that I had ever ordered, the Player's Companion and the Scourge of the Sword Coast, were also items that I didn't receive within the time frame that I should have. So when I had ordered them, I waited, and after it was about 5 weeks or so, I contacted them and said, you know, how long should I wait for these? Because they still haven't shown up. So they just reprinted them and resent them. You know, one of the things I said is, so, you know, if the originals do end up eventually arriving, do I send them back? And they said not to worry about it. So that also was the same story with Unearthed Arcana. I offered to send it back, and they said, you know, it's not, don't worry about it. You know, it was a mistake on their end. And, you know, they weren't going to make me spend more money to send stuff back. So it was really, really great there. So, eventually, though, I did get the originals, though in both cases, the originals arrived after the replacements did. And some of these things actually kind of arrived in kind of rough shape. So the Player's Companion book that I showed you was actually the reprint one, or the second one that was sent to me. I did eventually get the first one, but it did come a little bit damaged from throughout the shipping process. And since it was also delayed by, like, this was months, like several months later that this finally came to me. So I would say this was something that got dropped behind other stuff or behind a shelf or got pretty dinged up there. So, you know, that was something that it wasn't really the fault of DM's Guild, but when I got the one that I had originally, or the one that I received first, was actually in much nicer shape. This was something that I actually did plan on doing a giveaway for, but part of me always felt bad about sending out something that was not in super great shape. I've always wanted to see if I could find a way to flatten everything back out, but I haven't actually done that yet. But I just wanted to show, for example, that their customer service is really, really good. So if a book arrived and, say, you know, the binding had come out or something like that, then they're really good about sending you replacements. I would say just, you know, don't abuse the system. Make sure that you're reporting things properly and accurately and not just for your own personal gain. But they've been really good, at least to me, in the past. So I guess I just wanted to sort of explain that. So the reason that I wanted to explain that is because that's how I acquired this. I actually traded the second copy that I received of Scourge of the Sword Coast to a friend of mine who had a second copy of this, because he had ordered something, and there was an issue with the printers having the wrong file, or the wrong product number for the file. So he ended up getting 2 copies of this. I had 2 copies of Scourge of the Sword Coast, and we basically swapped for it. So that's how I ended up getting this in my collection. I don't think they've done D1 yet. I think D3 is also available. I'm not 100% on that, but that's something I'll have to check on at some point. All right. Also, I picked up this here. This is Dead in the Eye. This was a free RPG Day module for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. This is actually the 2012 free RPG Day module. And this was, again, something that was the only way to get it. I'm sure you can get PDF versions of it for free, but it involves, you know, mutated beholders, and beholders are my favorite monsters. And it's just a fun little scenario that I would actually like to run someday, and I might try to update it for 5th edition and do that. But this is another example of something that there would be no other way to get this now, other than getting a PDF or probably somebody gouging the price for it on services like eBay. Alright, down to the last 2 items. For 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, I have the Book of Artifacts, and I love artifacts. And I don't use them a ton, but I love reading through them. I love seeing some of the ones that they come up with and some of the abilities that they give them. And this was just, you know, the book that had that, because artifacts, I think they were mentioned in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but there weren't really many examples of them provided. So this was something, again, that I just really, really wanted to pick up. And stuff like the Hand and Eye of Vecna and the Rod of 7 Parts, I think, are in here as well. And it was just something that I wanted to add to my 2nd edition AD&D collection, so I decided to do that. And then finally, I have, for 2nd edition AD&D, this is the Night Below and Underdark campaign, The Ultimate Dungeon Adventure, this is called. This is a hardcover that you can get. You can also get the PDFs for everything that I showed here. You can get PDFs for. There's more PDFs than there are print-on-demand items available. But this is actually kind of cool, because this was originally a box set that DM's Guild put together all in one book but gave you the option to get a hardcover, because for the most part, most of the books that they have available are softcover. Most of them are softcover only, but there are some that are hardcover. But it was really cool to have like this box set. That, you know, box sets are ridiculously expensive to try to get nowadays. So to have them put this together and have it, you know, again, a nice hardcover book, for me was an absolute no-brainer, and I love the Underdark. And this is probably, again, something I would love to run for 2nd edition AD&D when I finally get a chance to run 2nd edition. And essentially what they do is each book is its own separate part of the product here. So they'll give you like the cover for the book as well as its table of contents. So they basically just take each book, scan it, and like book 1 is the first book in the hardcover compilation here, book 2, book 3, so on, and they have all the maps at the end. And that's probably the last thing that I would say about getting the print-on-demand stuff. If you're getting adventures or anything that has maps included with it, it might be a good idea to spend a couple extra dollars to get a combination of the print-on-demand and PDF item if you want to get print-on-demand and you want to run the adventure. The reason for that is they can't include like the full-size poster maps. So what they do is they just scan the maps in sections and put a section on separate different pages. So it's something that you can piece together yourself if you wanted to. But to have the PDF and print them out at your local print shop, for example, would make it a lot easier. Or even just print it off on your own printer if you don't mind using the ink for it. So yeah, so that is my print-on-demand collection for D&D. So this is stuff that I got through DM's Guild specifically. There are a few other items that I got through DriveThruRPG. For example, I got the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu Quick Start rules. I ended up getting that through DriveThruRPG. I also got Basic Fantasy as well, but those are stuff that I kind of put away, and truthfully, I don't know exactly where I put them, and I didn't want to make a lot of noise moving stuff around because at this point in time, I am recording things late at night. But yeah, again, this is really excellent service, and this is a totally fantastic way to fill out your gaming collection. You know, there are some people that have the mentality that you have to have only the originals in that print-on-demand or reproductions, in this case, even ones that are officially, you know, licensed to companies to do. I've seen some people that have an attitude towards it, and I'm not one of those people. I absolutely love this service, and I consider it a perfectly valid way to fill the gaps in my collection. Because again, some of these things are ridiculously expensive. I'm not going to spend $400 to get a rules cyclopedia that's in rough shape. I would rather spend the $30 or $40 that I spent to get the hardcover. So an excellent, again, absolutely excellent service. These are the things that I picked up from it. There are many more that I do want to eventually get as well. It's just a matter of having the funds to do so, but I do highly recommend checking it out, and you can do so by clicking on the links in the description. So let me know in the comments below, what are some of the items that you've gotten through either DriveThruRPG or DM's Guild that you're really happy to have in your collection? What are some of your favorite print-on-demand items, or even what are some of your favorite PDF downloads that you've gotten through those sites? Because that's a big part of it, and a bigger part of it, truthfully, than the print-on-demand service. So let me know in the comments below what your experiences are with DM's Guild and DriveThruRPG. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I look forward to your comments, and I will see you next time. Take care.